Islam's view of the world. Islam versus the West.
They want to drive America and our coalition out of Iraq and the Middle East so they can stop the advance of freedom and impose their dark vision on the people of the Middle East.
Western misconceptions of Islam. From the inception of Islam, the Christian West has had difficulty understanding Islam as a different religious phenomenon than Christianity. When Muslims conquered the Iberian Peninsula in the 8th century, Christians referred to Muslims arriving from North Africa as Moors. Over the centuries, Spaniards continued to refer to Muslims as Moors even if they were from India or Indonesia. In the rest of Europe, Muslims were referred to as Turks. In Asia Minor, Christians referred to Muslims as Tartars, an ethnic name. When Europeans finally understood that Islam was not an ethnic group, they mistakenly perceived it in terms of a Western religious group. In the early 1900s, Europeans began referring to Islam as Mohammedism and Muslims as Mohammedans, incorrectly assuming the Prophet Muhammad had the same role in Islam that Jesus did in Christianity. To this day, misunderstandings continue. Westerners describe the mosque as a Muslim church, equate the Muslim Friday to the Christian Sunday, refer to the Quran as the Muslim Bible, and believe sheikhs to be Muslim priests.
The conflict in Gaza and the West Bank today is a struggle between extremists and moderates.
Also, Westerners mistakenly resort to their own worldview by grouping Muslim leaders as left and right wing, moderate, conservative, and radical. Freedom, justice, and peace. So different are Western and Muslim worldviews that identical words can have two different meanings.
We are now in the early hours of this struggle between tyranny and freedom.
یک خاورمیانه آزاد بدون وجود سلطه آمریکا و انگلیس است.
In the West, freedom is the ability of individuals to participate in the formation, conduct, and lawful removal of governments from power, the basis of constitutionalism and parliamentary government. For the Islamic world ruled by foreign powers in modern times, freedom meant national independence from foreign rule, which they equated with tyranny. In the West, the opposite of tyranny is freedom. In Islam, the opposite of tyranny is justice. For Muslim thinkers, justice is the ideal.
I am looking for peace. I am struggling for peace, but a just peace.
All of us, the sons and daughters of Abraham, living in a tent of peace again.
لن يكون اسما على مسمى ما لم يكن قائما على العدالة.
As for the word peace, Westerners have liberal and romantic images of harmony between groups or nations. In Arabic, the modern definition of salam simply means an absence of conflict, more like the word truce in English. The Arabic word sulha, defined as reconciliation, is much closer to the Western definition of peace. For example, the Arab-Israeli conflict was in a state of salam between 1956 and 1967 from a Muslim point of view. Yet there was no peace from a Western point of view. Nationalism, Christianity's solution. During the Dark Ages, European civilization endured 500 years of stagnation and decline due to the dominance of the Catholic Church in Europe. Next, strife between Catholics and Protestants threatened to destroy Christian society. Finally, Christianity saved itself by separating church and state and introducing the concept of nationalism, a nation-state based on geographic boundaries, ethnicity, and language to determine personal identity and political loyalty. Nationalism and the expulsion of the church from government was a success. It resurrected Christian Europe from decline. 300 years of world domination began with the discovery of the Americas, then the Industrial Revolution, as Europe led the world into the era of modernity. Europe also exported its Western culture and concept of nationalism to the entire world. However, nationalism, which evolved from Christianity's historic trials, would never integrate successfully into the world of Islam, where loyalty could only be to God, the sovereign of the world and all mankind. Islamic identity.
Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar.
Understanding the centrality of Islam in the lives of Muslims is the key to understanding Islam. For Muslims, the foundation of identity and loyalty revolves around religion, while the religio-political community defines nationhood. Religion distinguishes those who belong to the society from those who are outside of it. In 1917, the Grand Vizier of the Ottoman Empire stated, "The fatherland of a Muslim is the place where the holy law of Islam prevails." An Egyptian Muslim, for example, feels closer bonds to a Pakistani Muslim than to an Egyptian Christian, as Muslims of different countries, even speaking different tongues, have a shared feeling of a divinely guided past and a sense of a mutual plight and destiny. The Ummah, political authority and communal life. For Muslims, the true and sole sovereign is God, from whose mandate the Prophet Muhammad derived his authority, and from whose will, made known by revelation, is the sole source of political and religious law. The political community of Islam is known as the Ummah. From its inception, the Ummah was the fusion of politics and religion. The Prophet Muhammad founded and presided over an Islamic government as prophet and head of a state, and founded an empire whose followers understood worldly success and military victory were part of divine affirmation. Therefore, the teachings of Islam have social and political goals with the purpose of succeeding in this world, in politics, warfare, diplomacy, and economics. Consequently, in Islam, religion is not merely one segment of life. It regulates the total domain. In Islam's view of the world, mankind is divided into two irreconcilable camps: the territory of Islam, Dar al-Islam, and the territory of war, Dar al-Harb. All lands under Islamic control are considered Dar al-Islam, where Islamic law reigns. Those lands beyond Islamic control are Dar al-Harb, the territory of war, essentially the rest of the world. The Prophet Muhammad is said to have said, "Al-Kufru millatun wahida," unbelief is one nation. In the Islamic view, all of mankind will one day accept Islam or submit to its rule.
انشاءالله اسلام همه کجا رو فتح خواهد کرد؟ همه قله های جهان رو فتح خواهد کرد.
Logically then, Islam cannot recognize political borders nor permanent peace treaties with Dar al-Harb. Therefore, according to Ibn Taymiyyah, a 14th century Muslim jurist, any act of war against Dar al-Harb is morally justified, legal, and exempt from any ethical judgment. Islamism on the rise. Islamism is on the march, getting ready for what it considers to be a coming fateful war for the future of Islam. Since its Islamic revolution of 1979, Iran has been the undisputed leader of the Islamic revival.
امروز همه ملت‌ها بیدارند و ملت ایران پرچمدار بیداری همه ملت‌هاست.
Islamism is an indigenous grassroots movement championed by both poor and educated Muslims throughout the Muslim world. Islam is the solution, is the Islamist call to action against westernization and secular governments in the Muslim world that provide the masses with little hope or future. Islamism is an internal struggle for the future of Islam, not a war against the West. Islamists do not consider themselves to be revolutionaries, in the sense of revolution changing society in a new way. Rather, Islamists strive to rebuild internally by applying traditional principles to re-establish the past strength and glory of Islam. Islamist writer Sayyid Qutb, in Signposts on the Path, wrote, "The leadership of Western man in the human world is coming to an end, not because Western civilization is materially bankrupt or has lost its economic or military strength, but because the Western order has played its part and no longer possesses that stock of values which gave it its predominance. The turn of Islam has come."
باید بپذیرند که از اداره عادلانه و رو به پیشرفت جهان عاجزند.
To simply dismiss Islamists as extremists is short-sighted. Islamists endeavor to build a constructive society based on justice, using the best moral values from Islamic tradition, history, and law. Islamism represents the only serious alternative to the present forms of government in the Muslim world, and represents the innermost aspirations of Muslims across Dar al-Islam. The Pillars of Islam, Foundations of Faith and Empire. The religion of Islam. The doctrine of Islam holds that Islam is the only true and eternal religion. The Prophet Muhammad pronounced that he did not found a new religion, but rather was a messenger, calling humanity back to the one true path. Muhammad preached that Christian and Jewish scriptures were divine revelations, but had been altered over the centuries, such that they could no longer be trusted. Belief in Islam is also known as the straight path. Islam has no priests nor bishops, and even the ulama, the learned men, expert in Islamic doctrines and practices, are not set apart from others in Islam. All Muslims are equal in the Islamic way of life. God. In Islam, God is all-knowing, all-powerful, and the creator of all that was and is, and all that will be. God is the righteous judge of good and evil. God is merciful and charitable, but also capable of great anger. Above all, He is one and only one. Prophets and messengers.
ما اتفاقاً تنها ملتی هستیم که همه پیامبران الهی رو قبول داریم.
God's books were revealed to prophets or messengers who were mortals. In fact, the entire group of monotheistic prophets are part of the Islamic truth. Abraham received the first revelation, and his basic message was Islamic. The Quran says Abraham was the first Muslim. Muslims have high regard for Jesus, Isa, who is pictured as a wandering mortal preacher who performed miracles. He was given a scripture, the Gospel, but the book was hopelessly distorted. Muhammad's prophethood was the seal of the prophets. No more prophets will come before Judgment Day. In Islam, all prophets are revered, but no one prophet may be exalted above the others. The Quran. The Quran is the divine and sacred foundation of Islamic law, consisting of God's revelations to Muhammad by the angel Gabriel. Written in 114 chapters, or surahs, the Quran contains commandments, rules, ethical regulations, historical recreations, and wise sayings. An unswerving belief and devotion to the Quran is essential to all Muslims. The Hadith. Muslims derive spiritual nourishment and daily guidance from a supplement to the Quran called the Hadith. Muhammad conveyed many edicts on justice, property, responsibilities, and personal and family behavior that make up the Hadith, considered the tradition of Islam. The 5 pillars of Islam. Profession of faith, Shahada.
Allahu Akbar, Allah.